Hi, my name is Julie Anderson, and my next guest is Robert Fitzpatrick. You probably already know him if you are watching my channel and familiar with his work. He is the author of False Prophets, also Ponzinomics and Direct Selling, a Nonfiction Fable. We're going to be talking today, we're going to dive right into the first thing is the anti-MLM declaration that he created. Robert, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Julie.
And I thought we could go point by point over this anti-MLM declaration that you created. But first off, can you tell everyone why it's important to have this anti-MLM declaration in the first place?
Yes. That is the most important question. The points will sort of speak for themselves once we get into them. But why have one at all? So it looks like my camera is blurring a bit. Is it? Can you see it from your end?
It is a little bit blurry. Maybe sometimes if you hold up your hand, it might refocus.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Let's try that. Yeah, there it is.
Mine does the same thing.
Yeah. That's a good trick. I didn't know what was.
I got lots of them on my next hunt.
Yeah. Okay. So why? I've been at this a long time. I've gone through my own evolution of understanding of multi-level marketing, as many people go through. You start out, looking at individual companies. You look at individual people, upliners. You look at products. There's a snake oil this and something that, or overpriced. And so people get caught in a labyrinth of issues and points of discrepancy and deception. And it can be an endless conversation. And it sort of is circular too. And so what I concluded from all of this eventually was a real basic thing. First, multi-level marketing itself was almost never defined. People talked about this company and that company and this product, or they talked about the lie or the scam or stay away. But they really didn't say, but from what? What is it? What exactly is going on here that we've all touched or have been touched by? What is it? So that's the first part of the journey, is to define what multi-level marketing is. And of course, a couple of observations became apparent to me. One, all MLMs are the same, right? The product is largely irrelevant. It's the cheese on the mousetrap to bring you in. It's also a distraction from the trap itself. You're talking about, and I've said this before, even if you know the product is false, that still doesn't help you very much, because if you tell that the product is overpriced or whatever, if you were to tell the mouse that that's really low quality cheese, it really wouldn't help the mouse very much, unless you told him about this device, this steel trap that's designed to kill him or her if they touch it. So that was the first. And then to just boil it down to what are the essentials of multi-level marketing. And I eventually did come up with four elements, and they're essentially all the same. And which were the first one, the obvious one was, they're all endless chains. Now, anybody who has ever been in direct selling knows that at a certain level, there are managers. Often you will have a district manager above you and maybe a regional manager. So kind of looks like a hierarchy. But down there at the bottom is just a plain old salesperson. That salesperson does not get to go recruit more salespeople. And there's always a limit, and there needs to be a limit, because you can't have an endless number of salespeople in any one area for a product. So the defining characteristic of multi-level marketing is this endless chain. I recruit, but they recruit, and the people they recruit, you pay. You always have to pay to get in. It's not like a chain letter. You might get a chain letter that says, put your name on this and then send it to 5 people and, good luck will come to you. Or if you don't send it, bad luck. That's perfectly innocent. It's a bit silly, but it's kind of innocent. But the day they say, but send $5, now you've entered into fraud, because the endless chain itself is a fraudulent proposition. It cannot keep going because, the number of people can't keep expanding. It will always put the bottom level. The majority will always be in the bottom, so they can't win. That doesn't matter whether there's 100 in it or 100 million. The same percentage will always be in the bottom. So charging people to get into a scheme and promising that they could make money is a fraud on its face. And then the third thing is that, if there is a money proposition, and it is a money proposition, the way to make your money is you must recruit other people. You can't just not recruit. You will never make money in MLM. Even if you said, well, I'm just going to sell the product, I'm not going to recruit. Well, you would fail because you're not going to be able to sell these products. It's just economically, financially impossible to earn sustainable money that way. And then finally, and this is the part a lot of people do miss, multi-level marketing is characterized by an extreme money transfer. So we all know that the money from the bottom goes to the top. Yes, everybody knows that. But most people, when they get to the pay plan, they shut down, because the pay plan is a myriad of formulas, qualifying numbers, points, and structures. You have to have 5 underneath you, and they need 3. But then there has to be a number of points that you're achieving, and so on. And people's brains just shut down at that. But if you don't shut down, if you stay with it and look at it, what you discover is that it's a pretty simple-minded formula. And the formula works so that the more people underneath you, because you're getting the money from them, the more there are, the higher amount you get at the top. So in this way, more and more money keeps being, and this is all done by what they call bonuses and commissions and so on. So what you discover is that it's an extreme money transfer. So that turns out to be, the qualifications also of a pyramid scheme, an endless chain in which you pay to join, in which you must recruit other people in order to gain money, and that the plan transfers the money from the last ones in directly to the people at the top. So that was the first thing for me was, okay, they're all the same, and here's what they are. So why aren't people just saying no to MLM, period? And then you wouldn't have to go and get too crazy about an individual company, because even if you shut down that one company, there are hundreds and hundreds of others exactly like that one. So it's really a syndicate. It's a racket. It's an actual racket, global racket. And so I thought, what has emerged, it began in America, US, was invented here in the US. It got legalized here around 1980. It exploded in duplicated companies. They spread all over the world. It's an organized scam, a financial trap. The governments generally do nothing about it. Consumers are being deceived and entrapped and lured in and defrauded, spit out, and then others come in. So what there needed to be, in my thought, was a statement that identified the whole thing and then sort of piece by piece explained what's wrong with it and why people ought to be against the whole thing. That's the real purpose for the declaration. Over all these years, I've seen people, the first anti-MLM websites were always and only directed at Amway. Those were the first. Most people don't even know about them because they're all gone, and it was a long time ago. But a lot of people thought it was just Amway. And then when somebody said, well, what about this one or that one? They said, well, they didn't know about those. They had no reason to grasp that they were clones of Amway, and that essentially all of them are clones of Amway because of the history of multi-level marketing. So that was the concept behind it.
Thank you for explaining that, because this is helping me and other people that have left multi-level marketing. It's understand that it's when we're starting to speak out, we know what we've been a part of has been a fraud, but we're grappling with how to explain it. And we come across even resistance in ourselves thinking, but my company was different. My company might have been the unicorn company because I didn't experience this abuse or this defrauding, or I didn't have to recruit people, any of these other explanations. But I really like how you've just emphasized and given us language and points to define what these things are, which are outside of relying on one particular company. So those 4 hallmark characteristics that you just said, endless chain, recruiting mandate, pay to play, and extreme money transfer from the bottom to the top, but also elaborating on it's not just the money flowing up, it's that the more people are underneath a person, that's the more money that's going up to the top. Did I get that right?
Yes. In other words, if you would, and I've had to do this because I've been in, I served as an expert witness in quite a few cases. So I had to break these things down because judges, they're like everybody else. They don't understand it either. So this pay plan, it's incomprehensible, actually. It's designed to be incomprehensible. There's just so many variables. You couldn't read it and say, oh, I think I understand it. Again, anybody who's ever been in sales, the one thing that you do as a salesperson, you master the pay plan. You know how to maximize your income by selling this product and not that product, or selling it at the end of the month versus the first of the month, and things like that. The salesperson is always going to be the expert on the pay plan. But in MLM, I've never met a person yet who could explain to me the pay plan. And when I first got involved, I was working with some people who had been in Amway for 10 years. And I said, explain the pay plan to me. And I realized, oh my God, even they didn't understand it. They didn't know how it worked. And some of them said, well, what they tell you is just trust the computer. Just go out and recruit and buy and keep buying. Don't quit, never quit, and keep recruiting. And eventually, so I said, well, that can't be so, but I had to plunge into this thing. And what you discover is it's a very simple formula, and it is the opposite of all direct selling. Indirect selling, real basic sales. Somebody goes out there and sells a product to a customer, and there's a commission. So the customer pays $100, and between the salesperson's price, which is, let's say, $50, and the person paying $100, there's $50 profit in there. So there's $50 of commission. And the salesperson who makes the sale usually gets most of that $50, right? Now, if he had a manager, she had a manager, the manager will get a cut too out of that $50. So maybe they'll get $10. So the salesperson gets 35, let's say. His or her immediate manager maybe gets 10. Maybe the manager has a manager and they maybe get 4. And maybe that manager has a national manager and they get 2. But you see, the formula is that the person that makes the sale gets the vast majority of the money. So if you added up all the commissions that were paid on all the sales, And you said, well, now there's 4 groups. There's a national manager and a regional and a district, and then the salespeople. Who got most of that money? Well, overwhelmingly, it would be the salespeople. Now, true, the guy at the top got a cut of every sale, so he might make more, or she might make more than any salesperson did for being the executive director. But they would not have gotten all the money or most of the money. Most of the money would have gone to the salespeople. That's normal. And that couldn't be any different. You could never sell somebody, say, okay, you go out, you make a sale, and there's going to be $50 of commission money involved here, profit for us as the sales force. But you're going to make the sale, you get 10, and the manager is going to get 40. So what? How could that be? How would that be justified? So multi-level marketing turns it on its head. And if you break it down, as I've had to do, you will see that the top 1% gets 50 or more % of the total payout. Now that on its face tells you then the company doesn't reward people that would make a sale. Let's say if I recruit you, I'm at the bottom and then I recruit you. Let's call that a sale. It's not really a sale, but you bought some product as a result of me recruiting you. So we'll call that a sale. But if on that sale in which you bought product and I recruited you, I got less than somebody a million miles away who's never met you or me, and they actually made more at transaction than I did, and you'd say, this is insane. That's not sales. That's something else. Well, what is it? Well, it's recruiting. It's a pyramid scheme. It's a system of transferring money. That's all. Okay, but there was a product that was involved. Yes, the product was incidental because it was really all about an income proposition. It was based on recruiting. And there was no real demand for that product because it turns out virtually nobody buys the product except the people that get recruited, or maybe a couple of people around them. They might call them preferred customers or friends and family or something like that. But you can't make a living selling to your preferred customer and your friends and family. So the only way you could make a living is to recruit a person who would recruit, and so on. So the pay plan. So yes, you got it right. That's the why it's called an extreme money transfer, because the pay plan is upside down and it's designed to pull all this money from the last ones in directly up to the top, which is contrary to a sales organization. Completely, it characterizes a pyramid scheme. That's what a pyramid scheme does. Yeah.
Thank you for breaking it down using that really good example of how much money in a hypothetical example, because one of the things that we were taught in multi-level marketing that you have probably heard too is that, your job is like a pyramid scheme. So it just shuts down our critical thinking.
Right.
We don't look at it. So just by you saying very simply, like breaking down, like using numbers, it makes it's like, oh, it's so good. It's like, even the word incidental, these are the things that are helping survivors, people that are wanting to speak out, like just like a hook onto how they can communicate about their experience and then to warn others. So I'd like to go into your anti-MLM declaration.
Yes.
We can point by point here. So the first one is MLM is not business. MLM is not direct selling.
Yes. So a lot of what we've just spoken about is to that point, that a business has basically two elements required for a business. Actually, if you investigate this and research it, you discover there really is not such a clear definition of, we use the word business all the time. What is a business? Well, but there are two elements that definitely go into it. The first is what they call a voluntary contract. You and I are doing business together. We're in business of some kind. I'm selling something to you. That's a business. The transaction will be called a business transaction. For it to be a business transaction, there has to be a certain voluntary contract. That is, we enter into it freely on our own, and we have enough information to do that. So if I pull out a gun and say, give me your wallet, that's okay. We had a transaction, but that's not voluntary. If I tell you, here's the product, but I don't inform you that the product is going to fall apart, 2 days later, you didn't have enough information to have gotten into it. So as we know, multi-level marketing, you don't really understand it until you are in it. And then it's too late. You don't understand the pay plan. You don't understand that you have to recruit to make money. And you don't understand that if you have to recruit to make money, then only a tiny, tiny fraction of all the people in it can possibly ever make money. So it's a doomed deal. You've been swindled. You've been lured into a financial trap. Well, you wouldn't do that normally if you had enough information. So it's in the withholding of information that makes it involuntary. And that's when people come out, they say, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, I discovered this. Well, why did you not know it at the beginning? Were you just foolish? Were you naive? No, you were swindled. They deliberately distracted you or withheld information. So it fails on that first qualification. Second qualification is at the end of the process, there is a reasonably fair exchange of equity here, of value. You give me money, I give you a product, or vice versa. I perform a service for you, you give me money, or maybe we even barter something, that's the basis of business. And that's what distinguishes it from swindle, from cheat, from fraud, is that there's a reasonable exchange based on a voluntary contract in which people are informed. That makes it a business. Lying is fraud. That's not business. Violence or threat of violence, that's extortion. That's not business. So subject multi-level marketing to that test. It fails because of the first deception, the enormous deception of the endless chain, of the extreme money transfer, the payment that is required. But then what do you get for that payment? Well, some people say, but you got a product. Yeah, but that's not the only payment you made. You invested time. The biggest thing you invested is the most precious thing you actually have. You couldn't even put a price on it. Your social network. That may mean your family, your closest friends, people that maybe it took a lifetime to build up trust, shared experience, and then you go and stake that whole thing on this scheme. You go to that person who's known you for years, maybe you're married to that person or they're close friends, and you go and take that trust now that they have in you, and you use the scheme, use that trust to enroll them. That's an enormous cost. And what you discover, of course, is one, the income proposition that was made to you, for which you thought you were buying and getting, and for which you paid some money, but also invested your time and then invested your social network, turned out to be untrue. It wasn't there. So there's no exchange of value. There's an enormous swindle here going on in which people invest time, precious time. They may take time away from real work that they've been doing, and that costs them. They may borrow money. They might defer education. They might neglect their children or their spouses or their friends. These are gigantic costs that this scheme, charges you. And so you pay an enormous fee to get into it in money, time, relationship, and so on. What do you get? Of course, you get nothing. You get the endless chain proposition for which you can't win in and you won't win. So doesn't meet the qualifying of business. So we shouldn't call it a business. And as we know, frauds often have fronts, business fronts. Tony Soprano carried a business card that said waste management consultant. When somebody said, Tony, what business are you in? He didn't say, I'm a mafia chief. Of course not. He said, I'm a waste management consultant. He handed him his business card. Yeah. So every business, every fraud, no fraud operates in openly as fraud. They have to have fronts. And so multi-level marketing has a front. The front is, we're a direct selling company. Now, who's going to argue with that? I mean, first of all, this is a weird thing. Direct selling really doesn't even exist anymore. It's virtually gone away. Why do you ever see anybody out hawking products door to door? I mean, attic sales, yeah. Little pop-up sales here and there, but actually earning a living no, it doesn't exist. It used to. It had a valid purpose at one time. And when it existed, it developed a kind of lore around it of heroism almost, of the entrepreneurial, the person willing to go out and hit the streets and sell, and the initiative involved. There's a certain independence to it all. In truth, nobody really ever made much money in direct selling. Nobody loved it. It was never heroic, really. But it does have a lore. And so the multi-level marketing not only hides behind the products as if they're really selling these products, but it also hides behind the whole tradition. It's very hard when somebody's direct selling to say, well, what kind of business is that? Sounds kind of seedy or scammy or what. It's sort of a given. It's a bedrock kind of business that's valid. So that's what it hides. That's what it hides behind. And as long as you think of it that way, even though you lost your money, even though you alienated your friends, you wasted 3 years of your life, as long as you keep calling it a business, you're the loser. Hey, that's the market. That's risk. That's entrepreneurship. But if you can say, wait a minute, it was not business. I was never in a business. I was swindled. This was a scam. This is a racket. And well, then, you have some clarity. But the language of the front of business blocks you from grasping the reality of what happened. And as long as you keep calling it a business, as long as if somebody beats you up and you say, but he's my boyfriend. No, he's not your boyfriend. As long as you keep calling him your boyfriend, you're probably going to get beaten up again. And that's the same kind of process here. Shift the language and the reality will show up. Stay in that front language, that fake language, and it'll be very hard for you to grasp it. That's the idea. It's not a business. So that's point number one.
Okay. And that's kind of rolling right into point number 2. The use of business terminology for MLMs is appropriate and misleading.
Inappropriate. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Inappropriate. Sorry.
Inappropriate. Yeah. So as long as all of these things are part of the front, he's a manager. Does he really manage? Of course not. It's a rank. You get 3 people in, you become manager. Right? Get 8 people in, you're mentor, or whatever these terms are. Get 12 people in and you become executive manager. No, you're not executive manager. And then calling them, even in the film, I watched recently some of the film that was on Netflix called LuLaRich. Documentary, one of the few really good documentaries about multi-level marketing. LuLaRich. But throughout the whole film, they still called everybody retailers. Well, what was wrong with LuLaRich? You couldn't make a living as a retailer. So why are you calling them retailers? They're not retailers. So that's what I'm saying. As long as you stay in that language, it's hard to break, to see the reality, because you're still using terms It's like, you know, calling somebody a professor or a father or prophet, or these terms that infer reverence, respect, authority, and legitimacy, when in fact they are scam artists. So, you know, that's the idea behind. It's not a business. Stop calling it a business. Think of it as not a business, and then change the language. Get rid of those terms. I know they're there, but they are euphemisms. They are deceptive language.
And this is what we've learned about cults. Cults
Yes.
use language, redefine words, and it's the same thing. And when you had come out with this anti-MLM declaration, I had been making scads of content saying, I was in the MLM industry for 5 years. And I thought, no, like I need to stop doing that. But I didn't make the connection that the same control of language when I was in multi-level marketing was controlling me outside, speaking out against it.
Right.
I'm inadvertently giving it credibility and legitimacy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, of course, the great expert on the use of language for shaping thinking is George Orwell. And that's a great author to read, because that's what he discovered in his own life, of how the language determined the reality. And when you change the language, and propagandists and cult leaders all understand that the language, if you can get a person to speak of you in a certain way, you sort of have control over that person.
This just occurred to me too when you said that. It's almost like by using these business sounding terms, these proper terms, it's like you're proselytizing for the multi-level marketing just by using those terms.
Exactly. Yeah, you're using their own terms of promotion, of disguise, and of their front. So by using them, the biggest one is the one you mentioned earlier, MLM industry. Well, an industry is, you know, by definition, a legitimate network of businesses delivering a service or a product. You wouldn't call the mafia an industry, right? You wouldn't call a warlord a business either. So, I mean, these are not industries. But when you call it an industry, you have immediately just infused the whatever else you say after that. I was cheated. I lost money. They lied to me. It's kind of like, well, you know, you should have known better. That's the rules of business. It's risk, you know, so buyer beware, and so on, because you called it an industry. You know, if you said you walked down the street, somebody put a gun into your back, took your wallet, and hit you over the head, you wouldn't say, well, a professional, you know, I don't even have the word for that. But if you called that person somehow a professional for what they did to you, it's like, well, wow, I admire that person. They did that very skillfully, huh? You know, and so the violence, the reality, the you know, is gone. And so calling it an industry, the terrible deceptiveness, the violation of people, the misuse of people is completely washed away. You know.
Thank you. Point number 3 is MLMs are essentially identical. MLM product transactions launder money transfers and disguise MLM as direct selling.
Yes. And we did speak about this a little earlier, about the identical. And this, again, it takes a while to get through it, because you're faced with products. One sells toothpaste or anti-aging cream, another sells you know, clothing or cosmetics or something like that. How could they all be kind of the same thing? Of course, they have different names. They have different corporate entities, different leaders. So they appear to be independent companies, separated from each other. But if you break it down first again to see what they are and what they are not, and it really begins usually with people realizing what they are not. they're really not selling that product, because that product actually has no demand. There is no real demand for these products. I should qualify that, because when a certain momentum develops of the mania of people joining a scheme, the product gains an aura around it. And so suddenly people think the product is really worth something. How could it not be worth something? Look at all that excitement around it. So you're going to buy a protein powder? Well, why not buy the most expensive one sold by this multi-level marketing? Because look at all these people, whereas this other one's just sitting on a grocery store shelf. But if you read the ingredients, they're the same. But the MLM product is 4 times as expensive, and yet some people will want it. But it's again, it's and that's on the edge. In general, there's no real demand for these products whatsoever. And what happens if they weren't part of the enrollment scheme and the qualifying and all that, nobody'd buy it, really. Nobody'd buy it. So the product is irrelevant, and that's hard for people to get past. It's just the cheese. Doesn't matter if it's Swiss cheese, Camembert. Doesn't matter if it's a rare Swiss French cheese or whatever. It's the same. It's the same. And the hype, if you just you'll notice that the rhetoric is essentially identical. Close your eyes, you wouldn't know which one you're in if you went to a big rally of some kind. The speakers move from one to the other. The promises are all the same. And then go a little deeper. The policies, the rules, they're all the same, each company. Then go into the pay plan. As I say, most people tune out at that point. They don't see, but if they did, they'd see they're essentially identical. And I say identical, we're talking about something that started in the 1940s and hasn't really changed. Why would they change it? It works. And it works beautifully. And in a way, in the past, historically, many frauds were religious frauds, because religion was the most powerful, we're talking hundreds of years ago, most powerful force. So there were a lot of religious frauds. Today, the most powerful front you can do, the greatest authority that you can associate yourself with is business. So business is CEOs have become heroic figures in America. And so, if you can call your fraud a business, you've gained an enormous stature. So that's why I say, if you can get past that language of business, get past that identity of business, especially get past the identity of direct selling. That's the easy one, actually. That's why I wrote that last little book called Direct Selling, a nonfiction. Yes, because I wanted to describe what real direct selling looks like. And then you can see that multi-level marketing took many of the manipulations that were in that form of selling that were used on customers, and they just used them on the salespeople and made the salespeople the customer. And why did they do that? Because they're going to turn the salesperson into part of a pyramid scheme of recruiting, get the salesperson to recruit more sales. So there is no customer, so you don't need demand for the product, because you manufacture the demand by creating the demand for the money that you're promising. But to get to that money, you got to buy that product, so you create a demand, you make a market for it. So, that's why I said, if you can get rid of the identity and get rid of the language, and that, then you're free. Then you can see it. You can begin to see it at that point.
Point number 4, multi-level marketing is a destructive cult.
Yeah. Well, so the first 3 might say is what it's not. It's not direct selling. It's not business. Don't use the language. They're all the same. Same what? What are they exactly? And at that point, you have to look at their behavior, and I know this is even harder for people to, because they're a cult, whereas we talked about how a business can be disguised and how it gains a certain stature. But the word cult is less defined even. Very few people really know what a cult is. Most people think a cult is a marginal, small thing, Moonies, Heaven's Gate, Jim Jones. What the have that to do with me? I mean, I'll never join a cult. And by the way, how could a business be a cult? So that's the other part of it. If you still think it's a business, you couldn't imagine it a cult. A cult, by definition, is a kind of esoteric thing. It makes existential promises, profound promises about life, about mysteries, about salvation, about happiness, about enlightenment. It promises you profound things or answers to profound questions. And businesses don't do that. Businesses are pretty earthy, mundane. It's about grubby work. It's about day-to-day grind. It's dollars and cents. It's balance sheets. It's measurable. How could that be a cult? You get into a business, pretty soon you figure out real quickly what's good, what doesn't work, what's bullshit, what's real, and so on. So a cult is the opposite. It's about belief, faith, worship of a leader, and some kind of utopian promise and goal. It's a very special organization. So how could MLM be a cult? Well, if you start looking at their practices, then you see how that works. That they teach you that you have joined a unique, extraordinary organization, something that you're very lucky to have found. People that are not in it are almost of a lower status of awareness. And so if you recruit them, you're helping them. If they reject you, well, shame on them. Stay away from them. The leader is a guru, a prophet, almost a godlike figure, because he or she has this esoteric knowledge, this special knowledge that we're all trying to get, that can unlock amazing powers. But you will never hear a business talk like that, right? MLMs masquerading as businesses actually get away with this, talking about it. They will use very specialized language that is nonsensical, like we said, using these terms, but they make it, sound like they are profound. They try to disconnect you from the rest of your life, from your community. They'll tell you, if your friends don't support you, get away from those friends. I grew up with them. I went to school, or we went through we went through the army together, or we went through pregnancies together, or, give them up. Yeah, because they're standing in the way of your success. You have a spouse, partner, not supporting you. Maybe you need to get rid of that one too. Well, again, what kind of business would ever do that? But that's exactly what cults do, because they want to draw you in. Why? Because they want total control. It's a cult is a violent, dominating force over people. And some of them do engage in violence. They all engage in psychological violence. Some of them may kill people, but all of them will character assassinate people. So if you violate their principles. So multi-level marketing meets all those qualifications. I mean, there's no question. And anybody that's been in an MLM or even goes to a meeting, you get in there and you go, what in the heck is going on here? What are these glassy-eyed people? Why are they crying? Why are they clapping? Why are they laughing hilariously at this stupid joke this guy on the stage said? And who is this joker up on the stage? Why do they think he is so knowledgeable and, profound? And right, if you see it from the outside, that's the way it looks. So, you don't see this in business. I know Apple Computer can get a lot of people excited, but not like that. Not like that. So, then you see the elements of it, and then the absolute control that it wants to put you on, the scheduling, the dominating your time, manipulating your emotions. They almost always try to get you to kind of confess, so that there's, again, control over you, why you're in it. Well, let's face it, most people get an MLM out of either a sense of frustration or failure in the rest of their lives, or certainly in their work lives. Often they get into it as the result of a point in their life of disruption, a death, a divorce, a layoff, an unemployment, a sudden medical crisis, family death. I've heard the stories. You probably have too. Almost everybody will say that when they ask, well, why did you join? They will say, well, I was kind of at a vulnerable moment. Yeah, precisely. And they took advantage of that, and they got you to say these things of what was going wrong in your life. And then they use all that. Oh, you want more fulfillment in your life? You find life meaningless? This can answer that. You're chronically in debt and you're always struggling to meet your bills? We can fix that for you. You don't feel confident in life, you feel like people are sort of humiliating you, and this can change all that for you. You're not a success. You didn't live up to your hopes and ideals. We can make that change. So whatever it is you want, but it's always something big. It's not something little. And that's what cults traffic in, is the profound, the esoteric, something that has enormous meaning to you. So that's the point. That's to say, a cult is an extremely dangerous thing. It is a form of mental enslavement. It is a form of fraud. The fraud leader, the cult leader, wants to gain control of you over you. Why? For your money, usually, for your sex sometimes, or just your labor, but so it's a form of enslavement, the three things I just listed there: your labor, your money, and then sexual power over you, or abuse of you. That's what happens to slaves, right? That's what happens to enslaved people. They are sexually, financially, and their labor is stolen from them. So that's really what a cult is: a form of mental enslavement. And so it's a very dangerous thing. And if you can see that in the MLM, that this is what they're engaging in. And why would they do that? Well, remember, they're running a scam here. So, they don't want you to figure it out. And the best way to get you to not figure it out is to get you caught up in this whole other psychological domination thing of you're trying to become enlightened, or you're trying to learn the secrets of life, or you're trying to master certain skills that they claim they have to offer you, the secrets to success that they have, So that's what they traffic in. And they do that. While you're doing all that, of course, you're still buying. You're paying every month, and you're proselytizing for them. So that's how it works. So that's why I put that in there, because now, after you figure out what it's not, okay, what the heck is it? And that's the first. That's destructive cult.
Got it. This is so good. I'm so excited for people to see this. Okay, point number 5 is U.S. law enforcement policy toward multi-level marketing is unfounded, perpetuates harm, must be changed.
Yeah. And what is U.S. law enforcement? Remember, I say U.S., not Canadian, and not Australian or UK. France or anybody else, because multi-level marketing began in the United States, was invented here. I won't go into the whole invention story because it's in the book and it's around now. More people are telling that story. Yeah, it's in Ponzinomics. The origins, where did it all come from? But the point is, it was invented here. It's a very American thing, multi-level marketing. It was based on these ideas about freedom and entrepreneurship and business and commercial success sort of equating with human success, wealth equating with worth, human worth. These are very much American views, social thought, you might say. And multi-level marketing historically gained the backing of the U.S. government around 1979, 1980. It did this with political influence buying. Millions of dollars contributed to political parties and pushing that disguise. It also works kind of well for politicians to back it because, and this is a hard thing for a lot of people to see that, but the truth is the economy has been squeezing people for quite some years now. Fewer and fewer people are able to buy a home. More and more people, this is especially true in America, but it's happening more and more worldwide. The cost of living keeps going up. Going to college becomes almost impossible because of the debt you take on. Some people have to defer having children. So point is, and wages, labor unions are kind of gone. So, the wages have declined and people can work 2-3 jobs and still can't actually even pay their bills. So multi-level marketing serves politicians very well by spreading the word to millions and millions of people. Hey, it's not the government's fault. It's you, because look at the opportunity that's out there. It's available. You just have to do the work. So it distracts people from really ever sitting down and saying, this thing is not working for the average person. We really need either better leaders or different policies or different politics or something. But if they're out there chasing, the endless chain and recruiting their friends and buying snake oil and thinking they're going to become wealthy, they're not going to their politicians. This is not left or right. This just serves politicians very well. As a consequence, due to all that influence buying and let's say due to the convenience that it offers politicians too, the sort of good service it gives to bad government, it has been backed by the government. Our official policy in the United States is multi-level marketing is legitimate direct selling. That's the official policy. So even when they prosecute one, rarely, but they do every once in a while, they will always say, but multi-level marketing is legitimate direct selling. Well, there's the Direct Selling Association said there's nearly 1,000 MLMs out there now. Millions, tens of millions of people are in them, briefly at least. So there is an official policy, and this extends worldwide. In effect, multi-level marketing has the backing of the government. They don't. All that we've just said, this is not something secret, new. They know this too. They know that if they prosecute one MLM, they could find 200 more tomorrow that operate just like that. But they don't. They pretend, they found a bad apple, So the consumer is going, well, okay, I was in that one, I lost. Oh, but my neighbor says that this other one is very different. So they're vulnerable to being pulled right into the other. So multi-level marketing enjoys this enormous support from government. It's also support just by neglect. They don't investigate. They treat it as legitimate. They they pretend they don't know about these other things. So in the declaration, I said, I think that should be called out. that when somebody says, but it's legal, you know, well, it shouldn't be legal. That's what we should be saying. It shouldn't be. It's legal. It's not law. As our friend David Breyer says, I love this distinction. It may be legal. It's not lawful, you know? And I usually say it may be legal. It's not legitimate, you know? So just because something is legalized doesn't really change what it may be. If the law has been distorted, in this case, the law was grotesquely distorted through influence buying and through just neglect, you know. So that was part of the declaration. And I think that it would help people get free of, you know, and I've had this thrown back at me so many times. They'll listen to my story, a journalist, for example, and it's like, okay, got it. Yeah, well, I was in one too, or my friend was, and I sort of see what you're saying. I get this about the direct selling. I get this about the product. I accept that 99% of the people lose out and quit. But how could it be a fraud? I mean, how could it be all that? And the government doesn't do anything, you know? And who the hell are you? Are you saying you know more than the FTC? Right? I get this all the time. So, no, I don't know more than the FTC knows exactly what I know, but they have politically chosen to just let the abuse flow. That's politics. And until people call them out, nothing will change. As long as we keep thinking that somehow the government must have some good reason for calling this legitimate. They don't. They don't have a good reason. It's real low down politics. That's all. That's all it is. So that's the the last piece of the declaration is you got to break through and break free of the government policy because it's unwarranted. What were the terms I used? It's unwarranted. It's inappropriate. And there's another term.
And it must be changed. Is unfounded, perpetuates harm, must be changed.
Yeah, it's unfounded. So when they call it legitimate, well, explain to me how it could be legitimate. I've had so many encounters with FTC, Federal Trade Commission, also the Competition Bureau in Canada, same thing. Well, MLM is legitimate. This one here is we're prosecuting, or this one, they claim it's legitimate. Okay, name me one, please, that you would call legitimate. Give me an example. Let's take it out of the abstract. Just name one. That's the model. If all the others operated like that one, everything be okay. They never do. They won't. So not only is it unfounded, there's got no leg to stand on, but it's also harming thousands, millions of people. And, one person goes in, puts in $100, goes to a meeting, goes to recruit somebody. They tell him, cut out, it's a scam, it's a pyramid scheme. Don't bring that. They get discouraged. They quit. They lost $100. But for every person like that, there may be a few others that got lured in much, much more. And I mean, I've heard these stories for so many years. I mean, just horrific, upsetting things that have detoured people from their whole life course. I mean, caused them to quit school, caused them to quit their jobs, ended their marriages, lost their homes out of it. So I mean, in a time when people are just struggling anyway to survive, to think that this force is out there under government sanction, government approval to be selling this fraud to people is really just terrible politics. And so that's part of it. Can't be really against MLM without being against also the MLM policy of the government too.
You said something in a most recent newsletter from your website, Pyramid Scheme Alert, that was just bone chilling to me. And I had to read it a number of times, and I had to sleep on it because I'm still unpacking and trying to deprogram from being in multi-level marketing.
Sure.
And it was that since it was in 1979, the FTC reversed its policy on like the regulatory consensus that endless chains were inherent frauds. And they've legalized endless chains, thereby enabling MLMs to sue consumers who point out that these are endless chain frauds and they're pyramid schemes. That
Right.
just
Yeah. It became illegal to call MLMs illegal.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened. I know this. I myself was sued and for essentially saying that, in my opinion, this particular MLM violated a state statute that was a criminal statute of an anti-pyramid scheme statute. In some states, those are criminal statutes. It's a felony. So they never enforced these laws. That's the sad part of it. But and again, we have been, let's say, brainwashed, propagandized, proselytized, PR'd, spun to death over the last 30, 40 years about MLM, that legitimate is direct selling and all this. And we don't know. We forgot. Well, they say, how did it get legal? Oh, it was in the Amway case, 1979. Amway case. Why would the government have been suing Amway if multi-level marketing is, legitimate direct selling? Why would they? Amway's the biggest of them all. Well, because back then, the government did not see these things as legitimate. They saw the endless chain as a scam. And but how did Amway get through it? Well, that's again a little more to explain, but essentially it was just politics. Yeah, it's in there, the whole story of how they did it, and politics, and it was not in front of a federal judge. Actually, it was in front of an administrative law judge. The FTC could have not even accepted the verdict. They could have appealed it. They could have ignored it, actually, but they bought it, and they bought it politically. And from then on, I mean, we've seen more and more of this. I cited in that newsletter the sort of pretense of consumer protection on this. That is such an absurd thing to think that anybody is watching out for us preventing these pyramid schemes from masquerading as direct selling and defrauding people. The very chairman of the FTC at one point left. When he left his job, he went to work for one of the biggest MLMs that the FTC was actually prosecuting. Of course, the FTC gave that company a sweetheart settlement, and that's how it worked, because their former boss was working now for the MLM. So it's been such a farce of law enforcement that it has to be called out. That don't put your hopes in these agencies. They're politically controlled. They should be confronted, just like the MLM should be avoided. These government agencies, like the Competition Bureau in Canada, and the Federal Trade Commission, and the SEC in the United States, and the Department of Justice, our FBI, and so on, they've run away from this stuff. And and it's amazing. It's everywhere, right? Try and avoid it. Go to any party. Go wherever you go. Somebody is in there talking about MLM.
Yes.
So it's all over the street. It's on social media. It's in schools. It's in the universities. It's in the Chamber of Commerce. It's in the Congress. All in a pretense of legitimacy. So anyway, I also want to acknowledge what you're doing, Julie. I think this is it's courageous to speak out about these things, to offer valid information, and to do it in a non-commercial way is also where it's important. And there are some commercial podcasts that are doing great work too. I don't want to take it away from them,
Yeah,
but I know to do it in this truly non-commercial manner is, straightforward to the heart of people, to their minds, and it's a real service. So hopefully a few people hear it, see it, think about it, and are benefited.
Robert, thank you so much. I know that you've been at this for decades and you've had to soldier on pretty much alone, meeting up with different people along the way. But your work has had a huge cumulative effect. You've helped me before we even met. I saw you on LuLaRich. You've helped so many of us. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your hard work all those years. It's paying off. And I would like to end this, if you would feel comfortable. This is my Hun language coming out. Would you be open? It'd be like, could you offer any advice to people that are waking up from an MLM and they want to speak out? They want to make amends, similar to me, because that's not everybody's path. But do you have any words of advice for them?
Well, being entrapped, if you've ever been in one, and which hard to find anybody today that hasn't been involved in one, even for just a little while. As you know, nobody seeks out an MLM and gets into it. They're always recruited. You got enrolled. You didn't join. You got enrolled. So the power of spreading the word, just as the MLM has misused that. The power of spreading the word of stay away, that my experience should be a lesson, is important. It does have a ripple effect. So not being silent, and not everybody is going to do a podcast or a website or a blog. But just speaking honestly about it is, I think, when the language shifts and people begin speaking up directly, the silence is broken. And there had been silence for a long time. As you said, the 90s in particular, and up into the early 2000s, it was just a dead zone. The media didn't want to touch it, and everybody was frightened of lawsuits. And these things just had a grip over the mind of the countries. So I think that's changing. I can feel that popular sentiment, awareness, people are not afraid anymore. So just not to underestimate the power of just speaking honestly about it. My hope is that I can give language to people, because I know how hard it is. You're against it. Oh, you must have lost money. No, I didn't lose money. Somebody stole money from me, well, it's a business. No, it's not a business, So if you have that language, it makes it easier to speak truth to power about this. So that's my goal really has been to try and get down to the fundamentals and, deconstruct it and speak about it in a way that, and it's not limited by one company or another company, to get to the basics of it. That's the advice I have. I don't, the bigger question I don't have a very good answer for. Well, I wish I did. How do you extricate somebody who's in it? That's the question I get from so many people. I have a family member, a spouse. What do we do? And that's very hard. Having good language helps that too, though. If your spouse or son or whatever tells you it's a business, if you can show them how it's not a business. If you don't know how to say that, in a way, even as they're losing money, they will lecture you. I had somebody tell me that their son had gotten into it, was losing money, he was using their money in effect, and whatever else money he had pouring into this MLM. When they sat down with him and said, what are you doing? You're neglecting your studies. And he told them, and they had owned a business themselves, put him through school. He told them, you don't understand business. You don't understand business. So this kid is telling his parents who put him through school, reared him, roof over his head and everything, and had successful business of their own. But if they couldn't say to him, this is not a business, let us explain to you how it's not a business, they would have been much better off. They didn't really know how to do that, though. So they tried to argue with him about, they didn't know how to argue with him, really. They didn't know how to. And so, but that's a help, having the language. But breaking the spell is not an easy thing. That's not something that can be done like that. That's something that requires patience, non-confrontation, reassurance to the person that you're still with them, that you're going to stand by, reminding them of kind of who loves them, who they can really trust, and then hope that seeps in at some point. And people do wake up, usually. So I wish I had a better formula for that, though. That's one I haven't found. I haven't found anybody that found it either. But I think if the overall narrative is broken, there'll be less ability of these schemes to subjugate and captivate people like they do.